Okay, YouTube devils. What a week. Here we are. Of course it would be Friday the 13th. Well, we wrap up just a remarkable week across all asset classes. We've never seen anything like this. I've never seen anything like this. I can certainly say that. And I've traded through a lot of just extreme volatility, but this week was just remarkable. So I think we all have to kind of step back from this because the immediacy of what's happening in the market, I think, it has a tendency to create some negative impulses, right? Like, i.e., I got to get the fuck out of everything. I got to get it to cash, right? So you can really see that happening across the markets. It's just a wholesale, get me out of everything, get me to cash. You can understand the thinking. It's just human nature, right? It's complete fear-driven, instinctual, protect the home base. So you can understand it. Now, where do we go from here? Well, we're going to stay focused on crypto here, but of course we're doing. I should mention, right? So we're changing the format here a little bit for any of you who maybe haven't been watching recently. So here now on YouTube, we're going to stay larger picture, so I can get through more assets. So we'll probably stay on the larger degrees, daily and weekly. But if you're craving that kind of deep dive and really breaking into the technicals on it, I remind you that you can join us for free now over on the site, just tradedevils.com. Couldn't be any easier. But if you're looking for the deep dives, then that's we'll get to it in a second here. But if you take a look at the differences here, the social is really what we did to try and accommodate those that didn't want to make the investment into the belt system. Now, you may eventually decide to do that, but the social is really where there's a nice compromise. So you're getting access to pretty much everything except the belt system. So the deep dives, and I put the emphasis here on the live streams. We've just really started launching those. We had a really successful one on Tuesday night with two of my senseis are doing a bit of a live stream. It was almost like a podcast with the guys. So they went through a lot of major markets, and that was very well received. And again, the reason we're doing that is so it's interactive. It's not a one-way conversation. So that's something to keep in mind at a very reasonable price point. And then if you decided to go into the belt system, that's there for you. So just know that we're now doing 3 live streams a week. I'll be doing 2 of them, and my 2 senseis, and we'll rotate through different asset classes. But that's where, if you really want to learn and engage and ask questions and check counts, your count against others, we're really all part of that learning process. The live streams are a great way to do it. And then, of course, we record them because not everybody can watch it the time that we're doing them. So that's really the new format here. Now, with all of that said, let's get down to the market. And of course, if you have questions, right, we're easy to reach. Twitter, YouTube, email. Not hard to reach us if you have questions about any of those programs, any of your options there. Let me turn this off. I know I talk with my hands. Okay, so crypto. What do we do here? Well, I think we have to acknowledge that there's been just dramatic technical damage done particularly across the alts. It's just it's just a horror show in terms of the technical damage. And I think it's reasonable. We have to be soberly minded here and say this is going to take time to rebuild. So that said, I did a video yesterday for the members here and really emphasized this. There's a couple of emotions that traders are fighting here and this would be across asset classes. There's the natural fear that comes from seeing your assets devaluing, regardless of whether you're in the market, if you're swinging, if your stops were hit, if you're liquidated. There's that immediate kind of instinctual fear that comes over you as you see the evaporation of value. But that's in the trader's mind, somewhere back in the mix of that emotion is the recognition that likely in the midst of this chaos, there's tremendous opportunity. And we don't have to use this particular crisis as an example. We can look back historically. So as is the case and will always be the case in this kind of panic, weekends, for lack of a better way to describe it, those that can't afford to withstand the drawdown are selling indiscriminately. Get me out of the market. And of course, those that have the resources and the wherewithal and the capital to step in, this is the wealth creation cycle. It's that simple. So here, I mean, this is total market cap, but it wouldn't matter what asset we were looking at. As it's free falling, at some point it stops for only one reason: buyers start to emerge. It free falls because there are no buyers. At some point, buyers decide, okay, that's far enough. I can start buying here. Is it technically driven? Is it a function of value? I think technicians can certainly find a reason as to why we stopped here. Fundamental analysts can look at this, and there's some great resources here. And before we get into the chart here, I want to encourage you to read this. I retweeted this over on our Twitter page. This would be really worthwhile. So I'm sure many of you may have already read this. I'm sure many of you follow Pompliano. This, if you have not read it, I would read it word for word 3 times if you need to understand the potential here, which is really where I was going here. So, again, read that article, right? Download it, read it, retweet it. It's really, it'll make you think. It has nothing to do with any TA on the chart. It's just the potential scenario here in terms of what Bitcoin is doing. Well, I'll let you read the article, but I'd pay attention to that. Assuming you're not completely wrecked, and guys, I understand this is painful to everybody. I certainly feel the pain. We all feel the pain, but you're to the point where the market is forcing you to question your belief in the crypto revolution. So either you maintain that belief, or you're out, because you're losing that confidence. And that's the bigger picture here, and that's really, I think, what we have here is a crisis of confidence, and you've heard that applied to other markets. But certainly in the alt space, I think that's a big challenge here, the crisis of confidence as to whether or not we can rebound here. There's likely to be some carnage in here. It's not unlike what we saw in the .com bursting. There will be casualties. I think we can all recognize that. The strong will come out of this. But it's really a difficult time for anyone who's in this space, and so it's a question of your belief system here as would relate to the future. Where do you see crypto a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? And that's really being tested. So one of two things is happening here: either this is the absolute collapse of this asset class, which I do not think is what's happening, or we are looking at the buying opportunity of the decade. It's one or the other. I don't think there's a middle ground here. Either this is the gift to those that have the capital to be able to just buy even lightly down here at these levels that we haven't seen. Well, I mean, these are extremes. If you have the ability to buy in here, even if just lightly, to try and ladder into positions, because I'm not suggesting that the low is in. But if you have the capability to be accumulating here, again, if you're a believer, you've got to be looking at this as opportunity. Now, that again, I understand that damage has been done to a lot of accounts. So if you don't have the capital, perhaps this is the wrong video for you to be watching. But if you do have any dry powder left, obviously you want to be very, very selective in where you're buying and not just be indiscriminately buying everything that's under 5 cents. So choosing those stronger projects, the projects where you have belief in the future of that project or that cryptocurrency or whatever the application may be, this is a test of your belief. It's easy when market's going up. Right? It's easy to be a believer when it's going up. Much harder when we go through a week like we've just gone through here. So it is encouraging to see the bounce that we saw across the crypto space, which is really where I was starting. If I come over here, so we're seeing a little bit of a bounce here. That's encouraging to see, and interestingly, we're seeing it in the spreads as well. So yeah, sure, well, that's Tether, but there's a few casualties here, certainly, but it's evenly spread. So it's interesting to see the spread between the dollar, the alts to the dollar and to Bitcoin. I certainly just look at the charts. The dollar index looks like that's becoming the safe haven. People are just going to U.S. dollars. The sell-off in gold is, it makes you wonder why gold is selling off here. And the only, just if you think it through, why would people be selling gold here in the face of what's likely to be central banks taking interest rates to zero or negative rates? If we're in a 0 to negative rate interest world, you'd think we'd see more of a reaction, a positive reaction from gold. Gold is getting absolutely crushed today. It's really hard. The cross currents here are unusual. It's hard to make sense of it because the normal correlations or lack of correlations are being thrown out the window. And again, it's indiscriminate. Sell everything, sell anything. So that in the face of that, that's the opportunity. It's you buy when blood's in the street. So if you have some dry powder, this is not a bad time to start looking at structuring some ladders to get into the market. If you look across the alt space, we'll get to Bitcoin in a second, but if you look across the alt space, you almost don't really need to look at it, or you can just look at total 2 because all the charts look exactly the same. So this is a weekly chart of total 2, and I'm just kind of wicking out the support and the resistance here. And here, let's zoom in there a little bit. You're just kind of looking at this range here, so it's not hard to spot it. Right? That is either support. At this point, you're for many of these alts, you got to keep an eye on 0 in terms of where we could be and any projecting that you're doing. So either this is an area to be accumulating for what is going to be an epic push out of here, or if this breaks, it's just going to be a bloodbath. So again, we're back to where's your belief. If you're a believer and you have some capital to thoughtfully distribute and diversify across some of your favorite projects or projects where you maintain a belief in their future, this is a great time to, my God, what an opportunity. But it's certainly got to be capital that you don't need. It's got to be risk capital. I understand many have seen drawdown in their accounts, so maybe you don't have that dry powder, but where you can find it, I think this is a reasonable place. Right? The prices are so low, it's astonishing. Again, it's one or the other. It's either the opportunity of our lifetime or it's the complete collapse of this asset class. Okay, so that said, I mean, they all look exactly the same, right? If I go through these, essentially you have to blow up all your prior counts. There's almost no point in putting a count on it just yet until we get some pivots out of here. So I would just be at everything at the weekly level. Everything out to the weekly and say, okay, where am I? Where is you almost don't need to do a count on it. You just want to be structuring, whether you're looking at it in arithmetic or log, you just want to kind of get the structure here. Where's the new range? This is kind of what I've been doing, saying where are we in this range? And then of course volume profile can be advantageous here to be kind of watching for where those large pockets are. So here's the entire visible range. Where are we sitting? Here's point of control. That's Binance to the dollar tether. We were literally sitting at the point of control. So it's almost like a return to, oh, okay, we're happy here. Getting outside of it, not so happy. just it's the charts are unbelievable. They essentially, well, here's the one exception, the link to Bitcoin. It's kind of interesting. We're doing a deep dive on that for members. But all of this is just, it's ugly, man. There's just no other way to say it. So I think that this is the chart to be watching here, for, unless you're particularly trading a particular an alt that you've got a position in. I think this zone here, we got to get out of this zone. Right? We got to get out of here to start rebuilding some of that confidence. So you really have a couple of choices. There's the sit tight and hold, and the only reason to do that is not because you're in a panic and you don't know what to do. The reason to do that is because you maintain your belief. You maintain confidence in the space. If you've lost that confidence, the place to be is on the sidelines. If you can afford to be a hodler, you hold on. All right, let's look at Bitcoin because this is perhaps the one bright spot. Now, I'm not calling the low in. I actually don't think the low is in, but it could be. So just like the other assets, we got to go out to the longer term counts here. Jesus, I've got leaf blowers right outside my office window. I hope you guys can't hear that. Here, hang on a second. I'll put some headphones on. That's so loud. There we go. Now I can hear myself think. All right, so here's a weekly on Bitcoin. And obviously, just damage. There's no amount of lipstick I can put on this pig. It's just ugly. So where I do think we have to go now is we have to go to the very long term and consider where we are in the larger degree count. So I'm going to pop this into log scale. And I think at this point we have to come back to revisit the entire move. And it's long been a question of whether this was the 1, 2, 3, or whether this was 3, 4, 5. Well, at this point, I think we can reasonably start to forecast here. This is just a potential, right? That we'd finish the triangle here, and bring this right. I'm just kind of eyeballing those in terms of where we might anticipate the 4. So now, note this is log scale. I should mention this because I got several people commenting. If you put it in log scale, there is a setting here. Right, so if you fib level based on log scale, if you just leave that clicked on, you don't have to worry about it. Just click it on, and it'll just default to that log scale when you're in it. You won't have to redraw it or re-click it. So something to keep in mind. So I only paused there because I had a number of people saying why is mine not lining up with yours? So I'm always reluctant to go to a triangle until I get the D and starting on the E. But just looking here as in terms of where we could be going. This kind of comes back in mind, so swing low, we right to the 38 for us to bounce and put this triangle in this zone, right? I mean, you can kind of make sense of it and see how we could be. God, that's frustrating. It does that. Put that right there. I mean, that's call it 59,000. Of course, the implication would be we'd have to retrace the entire thing. So. We'll get to that. That would be a high-class problem if we're up here. Right now, the alternative is that we aren't doing that, and we're coming down for a bigger ABC. It's not a triangle, so these would get kicked off. All right, and we're just going to head lower, and maybe we end up with a channel. So it's just a giant. Obviously, we're not going through the subdivision. It's just an ABC. And potentially now, that's where we're headed. So both of those counts, assuming this is the third, which I don't think is unreasonable, have the same target. Right? But this is going to be a shock. Right? If we're down under 2K, that's 1,800. Now again, that's log scale 50 from the proposed wave 2. If we're coming down to this level, well, we certainly could. We certainly could. So I think you want to have a couple of different scenarios here, so you're prepared for it. If we break this low, right, well then out the window goes well, we could double bottom, but let's wait and see. Let's see if we get there. All right, so that kind of the longer term here. I forget to turn that off. Longer term, still, I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that, but we're not to that. So this is the next test. Are we going to hold here? All right, let's go to the daily real quick. Oh, where have I got my daily? Okay, to the daily, I think at this point we've got it. We can just, again, in the interest of simplification, right? Again, if you want the deep dive of the intricate count, come on over to the site. Join us as a social. You get all the deep dives and all the live streams. So here's the ABC, just in the interest of simplifying. Well, it's, I'm connecting this pivot and this pivot since these are just wicks. I'm using this pivot here. So those are the dominant pivots here. Where again, because those are wicks, not bodies, I'm going to connect here. Okay, center line of the channel. All right, that's something. But really, the point of coming over here is to look at these. Look at the volume profile. All right. So so you can see what's happened as we came down here. Well, let's just do it this way. All right. So we can look here. Here's the big one right here. If we were when we first came down, so you see the high volume node. Here's another one. All of these have been tested. And then if this was going to break, well, you could just look at it and say, well, where would the most logical place be that we would go, right? And there's the point of control is right where we went. So I mean, there's real value, and that's why you want to have this if you can. if you can manage it so that you can get that volume profile. Because that once we broke here, I mean, it was pretty much the obvious destination. Now, for those of you that were in a position to grab that, well, you're already up almost $2,000 on that, well, per Bitcoin, depending on how you traded it. I was laddering in. I was doing it at round numbers, not size, right? Not size. But I picked up some of this. That said, I still, if you're looking at the internal count, it doesn't look like we're done. Now, we could be, but it doesn't look like it. It would require one hell of an extension in the fifth to be done. But just looking at it, you might just anticipate just intuitively that if we're likely to come down, we're going to need to test that low to see how strong it is. Maybe we don't get there and we start something coming out of it. If we're going to roll over, then you know, just kind of big picture, you'd think something like that. You know, now we're down here. That would be, you know, we were looking at 1800, somewhere in this range. We'd have second algo target down here as well before we finish. If this is an AB and if this is the 3, the 4, and the 5, that seems, you can certainly see how that's potentially there to get down to that level. And now you're back to testing. Well, this will be a significant test if that breaks. You could certainly anticipate just the stops there alone. You could see how that could drop that far. Then you'd pick up a little bit of this low here. God, I remember trading that pivot so well. So clearly remember that. So coming back down to this low or prior support, is it going to hold? Second target, you know, starts to get ugly down there. So all you can do here is just approach with absolute caution. Just if you didn't have it before, you know, this comes with experience. Just the appreciation for how quickly the market can take from you. That's not to say that you want to trade with fear, but respect for how quickly the market can do something like this. Now, this is beyond, as I said when I started, this is beyond anything I've seen, where there's just no correlation, where it's just one-to-one, everything goes. And the speed of it is remarkable, how fast we've done this. So again, there's not much you can do other than say, okay, where do we build a base? Where do we rebound from? Where do we reset and start to see signs of buyers starting to take control? Could be that was a capitulation low last night. It's possible. I don't know that I would bet aggressively on that because it's untested. So right now we've had just a wicked free fall and then a reaction, but it remains untested. So if we're going to come down and test it into something like that, you know, I'd pay attention there. Of course, the other thought is you wait for clarity coming out of here. Get a clear motive. Wait for it. All right, it's going to take time to rebuild this. All right, guys, that's. I think that's everything I can add here. I don't think it's worth going through even the top 10 alts because they all look like total 2. It's ugly. So trade safely. We encourage you to get as much education as you possibly can. Those live streams, I think, are a great place for that. And then again, we've tried to make it much more reasonably priced for those of you that just want to get started on that process. Okay, there you go. I think we'll call it a day, and we'll be back next week. All right, guys, trade safe.